Hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.O. Combs Asian Art in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And today is September 20th, 2019, and this is our weekly video, of course, to take a look back at last week's eBay auction results. There was one thing that really went through the roof, and we'll talk about it in a minute, and see what's coming up next week, see what's going on over at CATAWIKI and other news. All right, that's happening. And one of the things I wanted to get into first was that there's a video that'll be in this week's newsletter. As you know, many of you know, we do the weekly newsletter here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you ought to come over and do it. And it's free, and you get a weekly update on what's on eBay and what's on CATAWIKI and what's going on. And we always include two videos, this video and a good video that we find. And one of the videos that was sent to me this week, it just came up on YouTube, is this one by Jessica Harrison Hall. And if you don't know who Jessica Harrison Hall is, she works at the British Museum. She's a legendary scholar on Ming ceramics especially, and many of you may be familiar with this book. This is the book Ming Ceramics that the museum put out a few years ago. I bought it when it was new, and I think it was around $75 or something. Today, that book is now $1,348 because it became so popular. It is the Bible on Ming ceramics. I think the book came out maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But it's a fabulous book, and she did a video that's around 13 and a half, 14 minutes long on Ming porcelains, and she discusses them in some detail, and it's worth watching. She does a really good job of explaining glazes and origins of design and forms and all that sort of thing. So if you haven't seen the video yet, it'll be on our newsletter page, and I strongly urge anybody interested in Chinese ceramics to watch it. It's very good. I hope she does more of them. I really do. All right, now let's hop over here and see what happened on eBay. This was one of the little bargains of the week. This was a very nice, probably first half of the 19th century famille rose teapot with those strap handles. This particular form, this round form with the berry knob on top and gilt, were most often done on Chinese export porcelains of the early 19th century. This one was done in a more typical famille rose palette of the day with a nice pink ground. Here's a picture of the bottom. That's got a nice foot on it. That's a pre-1850 foot, I believe. And here's the top of it with those beautiful green vines swirling, nicely painted and all that. And it went for a bargain. It went for $90. It had a slight hairline, I think, in the lid or something, but overall it was in good shape. It didn't have a lot of wear. The gilding was still intact. And somebody got a great buy, and maybe because it looks like more of a later teapot made in the 1890s, and this wasn't. This was a nice old one. All right, so good on whoever got that. And this was another bargain of the week, and I think this happened because the seller used sort of a strange primary picture, this one, and it made this nice piece of 19th century silk look like it was a little tiny strip. This strip was almost 5 feet long and about 12 inches wide. And if anybody looked at it carefully and blew it up, you could see it had very nice needlework, spotted deer, and all that business, and upper and lower brocades. That's a nice old piece of silk at the top. You notice the bit of fading in the red along the edge, which is fairly common. And this went for a bargain. It went for $26. How's that? All right, that was a terrific buy for somebody out there, and I hope it was one of you. Tabgatch had that. He gets good things. He often has good silks. So that was a very nice buy. All right, and then on to this. I wanted to point this out. Remember, everybody remembers this robe. This robe has been through the cow. I think it's on its 4th trip, and it should be a lesson to those of you out there who sell at auction. Be careful about reserves. This thing just sold the other day for, let's see here. Well, it didn't actually sell. He's had reserves on it. And if we go back and look at the history of this piece, it's been on here 3 previous times. The first time it sold for $6,100, didn't make the reserve. Next time it sold for $6,700, didn't make the reserve. And now last time it went through, it got up to $39.83, obviously didn't make the reserve again, and now he's offering it once again with a reserve. All right, so as a seller, from a financial standpoint, if he has an eBay seller store, he's going to pay $250 every time it doesn't sell in fees. And if he if he has a store, that's what he's going to pay. And if he doesn't have a store, he's going to pay 10% of the value, up to about several $500, I think it is. So he's out $700 to $1,500 depending on his selling agreement with eBay, and he just keeps putting it up and up and up. And don't do that. If you have something really good, the market will decide how good it is. If you describe it properly, you'll get what it's worth. All right, most of the time. All right, so that's too bad, and I don't know what he's thinking, because it's a nice robe, and he's frankly killing it. So there we go. Now, this was one of the big surprises of the week. I spotted this when we were looking through a list of possibles, and this was a really nice 18th, maybe early 19th century archaic form, gold and silver inlaid archaic bronze. Had a wonderful stand on it. This was quite a thing. Here's a nice detail of it, and has an inscription on the inside. I haven't had anybody read it to me yet, but there it is. This was a wonderful bronze, and in the end, it did very well. It started out at almost nothing. It ended up going for $72,300. It was quite a thing. Very nice bronze, and it came from a seller we'd never seen before. I checked their selling history, and they sell mostly daguerreotypes and old photographs and things like that, knickknacks. And he obviously got this somewhere out of a collection, maybe. And good for him. All right. But he didn't seem to know how old it was. But that's okay. At any rate, it brought a very good price, $72,300. All right, and then over here to this nice-looking barb rim bowl, Ming celadon with this incised, loose freehand incised work around it. This is a nice example. It wasn't a superb one, but it was a perfectly good piece of celadon, and it ended up going for $610. This was a seller that we keep an eye on, who's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, about 20 miles from here, and nice-looking dish, nice-looking thing. And then over here, this was added. This piece popped onto the radar after the newsletter came out last Friday. And we added it to the list, and there was another piece with it because they just suddenly appeared. I don't know why we didn't see them the first time, but it went on. I think we saw it Tuesday and added it. Very nice Kangxi jar with its original lid. This is a very good example. Here's a picture of the bottom. Good looking foot on that, nicely enameled, nice underglazed blue rather. Here it is, and in the end it did very well. It ended up bringing $5,745. It came from a seller who's over bygone years. I don't know who they are. They're at Henley on the Thames in Oxfordshire, and they also had this. This was even better. Wait a minute, we'll get to it in a minute. I guess that's not the next one. We'll do this first. This was that nice fish-handled form Feiwa incense burner, late Ming. I liked this a lot. It had nice color. I liked the overhang relief around the end of the roux heads. The glaze, the amber glaze, was nice and deep and dark in it. It had lots of indications of use and wear and whatnot. Nice old piece. Very attractive, had an unreadable stamp on the bottom, as many of them did and do. All right, here's a picture of the mask on the end. And it ended up going for $560. It had a restoration to the head of one of the fishes, but nothing much. It was sort of a minimal thing. And that was a nice-looking piece and good colors, good color on that. And then over to this. This was that other piece that the seller over at Henley on the Thames had. This was a really good transitional period square handle wine pot or teapot. Beautiful colors, nice figures. They're playing Go on the central scene there. These are fairly rare, and this was a nice one. Beautiful looking foot on it. That's exactly what those transitional feet can look like. They come in different varieties, but that's a pretty classical one. And here's a picture of the inside of the mouth of it. Nice exposure of the paste there. You can really see it. And this did quite well. It brought $9,227. And like I said, we added this to the newsletter after it popped up. I think it may have gone up as a 7-day sale or something on maybe Friday night or something after we did the newsletter, but we did add it. So always check back as soon as we add things. All right, and it was on the eBay Today page as well. All right, and then over here, that very cool Chinese saddle. I liked this. It's funky, it's got wear, but it had nice mounts on it. Nice red lacquer painting on it. Nice looking saddle. And these don't turn up very often, and there's not a big collector market for it. It's one of those cultural accoutrements that there's not a lot written about them and not a lot known about them. And as a result, they don't bring the world. And this one did okay. It brought $1,625. But these are pretty big. This was a nice size thing. And the seller listed it as 18th or 19th century, which I think is probably just about right. And a good looking object. All right, $1,600. Get yourself a saddle. If you ride horses, it might have been fun to own that. And onto this, the skirt, the nice gold ground and cobalt blue with greens and gilt thread. And this was a nice piece of silk. This was a nice skirt. A lot going for it. And it looked like it was in pretty good shape. All right, and it ended up selling for $455, which is right in the range for skirts these days, it seems. They seem to be bringing, $400 to $550, $600 maybe. Occasionally one with dragons will bring a bit more, but that was a nice one. And then over here to the another barb-rimmed celadon with a pairing of flowers in the center. This was better than the other one, I think. The glaze looked pretty good. When you look at these old celadons when they turn up, always check the center for wear, because these were used. These were used a great deal, and often the glaze in the center is worn off, and that heavily impacts the value of them. So always check that. All right, now we're going to pause this because there's a fire truck coming. Hold on. There we go. The fire truck went by. We have the windows open here today because it's really nice out. It's about 75, 80 degrees. It's supposed to be 80 degrees on the weekend. And near the water, it's nice. So anyway, so back to this. You always check these celadon bowls for wear in the center. If they have wear, it pushes down the price quite a bit because you lose a lot of the details in the artwork. Here's a picture of the back of it. That's exactly what they should look like. They fired these on little, circular discs so that they could fully glaze the feet. And they liked the feet glazed because they wouldn't scratch surfaces when they were put down. And this was a nice one. Here it is. You can see there's some good legitimate wear to that foot. You can also see the chatter lines in the bottom from when it was turned, which is sort of nice. You don't always see these on those old celadons. But this was a nice Ming example. And I think the price was perfectly reasonable, $1,413. We had a couple of inquiries about it, and that's sort of the range I said it would bring probably $1,200 to $1,600. So it seemed to be right in the center of that range. Okay, now over to this. This was a nice early pair of bronzes, probably Ming Dynasty. Sometimes people call them Yuan. I don't think they are. Usually the Yuan ones have more elaborate dragons, but this was a very nice pair of bronzes. Here's a picture of the mouths on them. Okay, and the bases, and there's the mouth, nicely done, turned over, and all that. Good looking patina on there, nice wear. It hadn't been polished, and somebody got a great buy on these. I think this was a fairly relatively inexpensive pair, $860. I think that was a very nice buy. He had them as Yuan Dynasty. I don't think they were. I think they were a little later, but still very nice. And then over here, the big pair of rose medallion jars made into lamps. These were very pretty, ready to go, and I'd use them as lamps. I think big lamps made from Chinese vases are wonderful, and they really make a room. And these were pretty, and they were in good shape. The rims look like they might have been ground down a little bit, or flattened a tiny bit to accommodate the fittings, but so what? And the pair went for $780. All right. He said it was also obviously it was drilled because they always drilled these back then. And then over to this, the little Ming jar. This was a nice little Ming jar with a cricket on it or grasshopper and flowers and so forth. And it too had been lamped. There was a thing back in the 20s and 30s, especially decorators really got on to lamping things, and they often did it with Chinese porcelains that at the time were not that expensive, and there was sort of a shortage in the decorating crowd among wealthy people trying to find great looking lamps, and they lamped lots of good Chinese porcelains, and this one went for $820 drilled. All right, and probably Wan Li. I agree with the seller on that. Nice looking pot. And then over here to this. This was that bronze Guiforme vase. It had a little repair to it, but this was a nice old one, Ming, beautifully done. It had some sort of repair up around the top. I couldn't find it, but he said it was there was a photograph of it. I don't know how elaborate it was. Sometimes when these got damaged, they repaired them with lead, which I doesn't really bother me. It's sort of a nice addition. And This, I think, was an excellent buy for someone. $178, all right? That is a very reasonable buy for that. It had been knocked around a little bit, but boy, that's a nice old piece with a good surface. Always be willing to pay more for bronze with a great surface. All right, and then over to this, the Chinese lacquer export tea caddy. This was a good-looking tea caddy. As I mentioned last week, it was in the preview. It had those, as they had its original wooden feet. Often you see them with later metal ball feet, and it's because these wooden ones were very prone to getting knocked off. And here's a picture of the interior. Had its original liners and everything in it with the little ivory handles. Even had the key. All right, this was a good package, and the lacquer was in very, very good condition because these were extremely prone to wear. When they got cleaned, they often were cleaned with ammonia, stripped off the lacquer, damaged the surface. This one looked pretty good, and ended up going for $1,180. Nice looking tea caddy. And then we'll pop over to the next thing, which was this, the Nanking reticulated Chinese export plate with that beautiful tightly done honeycomb pattern around the inside, and then these spear outer borders. A little hint on these, when you see really fine spear outer borders and these very tight honeycombs, you're dealing with a higher grade of Nanking than typical export examples. As they went through the years, the spears eventually turned into just 3 little dots, and those are typically later and not of the same quality. And here's a picture of the back, nicely trimmed on the back, and the plate appeared to be in beautiful condition. And the decoration on these best examples were always very good. They even shaped the openings, the cutouts. And this was perfectly reasonable, $388. Not bad at all. Loftseeker had this. He's a seller in Hampshire over in the UK in Southampton. All right. Now on to this, that dandy little square Japanese dish. I loved the decoration on this. It was very much like a painting with these waves, beautifully done. Early piece. This is an early piece of Arita, and he called it Arita or Kokotani. It's Arita, I think. 17th century piece. And look at that, $660. That is not too much for that at all. That's a nice little example if you collect Japanese ceramics. This came from Ceramics and Collectibles over in the Netherlands. They sell, I've said it before, they sell under the name of Shangri-La as well, and they have nice things. They sell on CATAWIKI also, but they get good things. Those guys are good pickers. All right, and then over here, we'll see what's coming up. All right, and one of the things that's coming up this week, it's already up to $2,011 with 6 days to go, is this very nice 4-sided vase with the figures on it and all that, but well done. Nice looking example, and we'll see how that does. These will all be in the newsletter this week if you want to catch them. All right, and then over to, this is a list of things there. The Kangxi shaped rim dish. This is a nice Kangxi dish, and it's the type that has that quickly drawn sort of penciled in decoration where they outline the flowers and then they very quickly with a thin brush sketched it in, and if you blow it up you can really see it. There it is. And you see all these little lines, lots of lines, and it took a lot of work to do these. Instead of using a broad brush and just coloring them in, they shaded it in line by line by line, just thousands and thousands of them. And here's a picture of the bottom. There's a little glaze gap in the bottom, and it's got that sort of silly seal mark that you see on some Kangxi examples. Here's a picture of the rim, and we'll see how that does. It's about an 8-inch or 9-inch dish. It's up to $100, and it should bring $400 to $600, but it's a nice old one, and it's sort of an unusual form, and it has this beautiful molded rim, sort of uneven up and down rim. All right, and then over here, this just came up. It looks like an early jar. It's a 19th century one, but it's very well done. Nicely done jar, done sort of a Ming shape or an early Kangxi shape. And I love the little bird down at the bottom here that was stuck in at the bottom of the frame. And you have these figures, and there's a horse. Everybody knows that's why I put it in there. It's got a horse. And it's a little under 12 inches tall, and it's up to $153, 7 days to go. Medallion has that. It's a good-looking thing. And then over on CATAWIKI is this nice-looking Kangxi period dish with a figure on a ledge with an attendant coming up, and very nicely done. And it's up to, $184. It closes on Sunday. Over on CATAWIKI, that's in the newsletter already.
And this Wan Li dish, a nice looking piece of Wan Li. It closes in a week, but nice deep colors on that. That's got good color, nice deep cobalt, and good contrast between the white areas and the cobalt areas. And that's one of the things you like to see. And here's another one, very similar to that last one we looked at with a bowl, and it's got these mask edges around the averted rim, and you see that same mask on bronzes, of course, and other Chinese art. This is also a Ming Wan Li piece, and we'll see how that goes. And then lastly is this. This came up the other day. I know the seller. He's a fellow down in Florida. He's a good picker, nice fella. And he's out there all the time looking. This is a good vase. This is a nice big arrow. They call them arrow vases sometimes because they have these little tubes on the side. It's not really an arrow vase. The tubes are typically bigger, but it's stylized. But the figures, it's a molded piece and has this sort of raised relief work on it, I believe. Yeah, and it's cobalt. Sometimes it's flush, but this is raised a little bit and nicely done. And you can see here it's got a very good thick glaze, lots of bubbles. And here's a picture of the bottom. It has been drilled, but that's a nice 18th, early 19th century vase. I think it's a good looking one to me. And somebody must have made a spectacular lamp. And I think I don't think it's a late 19th century. And he just has it as 19th because he's a little conservative. But it's big. This thing is big. It is, let's see here. I think it's 20-something inches tall. Boy, you a lot of writing. 24 inches tall. There you go. All right, so you want to check that out. And that's about it for the week. And just so you know, we have begun getting a lot more information about what we need to do to vastly expand the site. It is turning into an epic project. And we're waiting right now for estimates and all kinds of things to see how we can go forward. But we're kind of excited about it, where we'll be having listings appear on here from basically everywhere in the world. It hinges on cost, and we may have to add a fee for it or something, or some sort of monthly charge. Not a lot, a couple of bucks a month or something, just to offset the cost of the additional server space and all the plugins and software we're going to have to buy. But we'll figure it out and try to, as we always do, try to keep things as reasonable as humanly possible, because we'd rather put our money into objects. All right. Well, listen, that's it, and have a wonderful weekend. And if you haven't subscribed to us yet here on YouTube, please do. And if you don't get the weekly newsletter over on Bidamount.com, come over. There's sign-up forms everywhere. You just click on it, put in your name and email address. It's free, and join us. All righty. Have a fabulous weekend, and I hope you all find something out there this weekend that you love and bring it home, put it in a good spot, and enjoy it. And thanks so much. Bye-bye.